And it sounds strange, doesn't it? Department of Education, we're going to eliminate it. And everybody knows it's right. And the Democrats know it's right. And I hope they're going to be voting for it because ultimately it may come before them. But everybody knows it's right. And we have to get our children educated. We're not doing well with the world of education in this country. And we haven't for a long time. It's very important to all of us. But beyond these core necessities, my administration will take all lawful steps to shut down the department. We're going to shut it down and shut it down as quickly as possible. It's doing us no good. We want to return our students to the states where just some of the governors here are so happy about this. They want education to come back to them, to come back to the states, and they're going to do a phenomenal job.
Representation has made it the quality of legal services to be provided are greater than the legal services of other lawyers. I'm Harry Steele. You found the Heart of Dixie podcast number 3. I'm an attorney at law down here in Daphne, Alabama. I'm joined today by Brandon Mosley, reporter and content manager at the Alabama Gazette. How are you today, Brandon?
I'm doing fine, Harry. How have you been?
Well, we're about to get some weather, so I'm getting prepared as all good Eagle Scouts do. Today we have a real treat. Representative Danny Garrett, Republican from Trussville. I'm assuming you live in Trussville. That's the bigger town there, but you also represent Pinson and Clay, and you're the chairman of the Education and Ways and Means Committee, meaning that you have control over about $9 billion. So we're all ears, Representative Garrett.
Well, I would use that term control loosely.
Yes, sir. So
I'm one of 100. I'm one of 105. I try to herd all the cats, so. Yes,
sir. So we usually just show our audience the topics of discussion and then move on. So a bill that came to my attention this week was a bill that's been proposed by Senator Arthur Orr from Decatur, and one of the provisions says that you're going to be guilty of a misdemeanor if you're protesting near someone's house at certain times of the day or night. Is that something that is likely to pass? And I'm asking Brandon as much as I am you, Representative Garrett, and just in general terms.
Harry, this is an issue that came up with. I think they were protesting by Brett Kavanaugh and some of the other Supreme Court justices' house.
Right.
You go into a residential neighborhood, and I think they're allowing protesting like in the afternoon or the early evening. But, you had people that were out there in the Supreme Court justices' yards protesting at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. And I think you had a little bit of that come up after a shooting in Hoover where, a off-duty police officer, I think, shot somebody who was stealing some shoes or something. They had a gun battle and somebody got shot. I don't know all the details, but I do remember doing a story on it. And protesters didn't like the way that went down, so they were protesting outside like the mayor of Hoover's house and in his neighborhood. And so the thinking is that it's really not fair to the family of the Supreme Court justice or the mayor or their kids or the people that live next door. I mean, because somebody in your neighborhood, on your cul-de-sac wants to, run for office and become, a mayor or a police chief or Supreme Court justice. I don't think that means that, people protesting at 2:00 in the morning is something the neighbors have to get stuck with. So this is, I don't think it's taking away someone's First Amendment rights, but it is regulating, really most cities you have to get a permit anyway to protest, You can't just hang out at weird times.
So it's a time, place, and manner restriction, not a total ban.
Yeah.
Okay.
My
Yeah,
understanding is it's like 30 minutes before sunset and 30 minutes before sunrise are prohibited times to or allowed. Well, you can't do it during the night, when people are trying to go to sleep and, all that stuff. I mean, this, I think, is trying to get to the doxing and the harassment and the bullying that maybe goes on from people who are just, not happy with what's ever gone down. So I think what this does is just say that you can up until 30 minutes before sunset, and you can't start till 30 minutes after sunrise or something like that. But I'm not. That's real about all I know about it.
And it's going to have to pass strict scrutiny, because I'm sure, like everything else, it'll be challenged. So something in your wheelhouse, Representative. We have a knife fight going on down here over reapportionment of school tax funds. I think we have a special 1 cent tax that is divided up, and I don't know. Some of it went to our volunteer fire departments, and they started building these massive fire departments because they had so much money. And I think you'll remember Steve McMillan had a hand in reapportioning that at one point in time. And then, much to all of our surprises, one day Orange Beach 2 years ago had a city council meeting and announced they were creating their own school board, and off to work they went. And there's been a lot of I believe there's been a lawsuit and a settlement agreement entered into between Orange Beach and Baldwin County School Board already. And so now there's Senator Elliott, the two major municipalities in his district have created their own school systems. And of course, what he says here is, I'm concerned about the message that Baldwin County School Superintendent Ellie Tyler is teaching our children. The concept of the wealthy, and this redistribution of wealth to the needy children. My family's been here for 300 years, and I can tell you, if it were not for the tax base in Foley and Bay Minette, the school children down in Foley and Gulf Shores wouldn't have had a schoolhouse to go to 100 years ago, because economics change, but we're all in the same boat. And anyway, that's my humble opinion about it. And I kind of I cringe when they created their own school system in the first place. And what we've seen since 1990, I can't think of a time when we weren't building a school here in Baldwin County. And of course, Representative Garrett, certainly the state has to recognize the economic engine that is our tourism industry, our seafood industry, and now, with Austell, I'm sorry, what's the name of our recycling plant, Brandon? Novellis.
Yeah.
Locating on our industrial and our mega site up here. Baldwin County is a major player in every way now.
Mm-hmm.
So
for sure.
Yeah.
So how do y'all see this playing out? Is it going to be decided at the state level with legislation, or is this something that's going to have to play out? The courts are going to have to decide this reapportionment.
Well, I'm not familiar with all the local aspects, local areas you talk about. I can speak broadly to the way we fund schools, and of course, we in Alabama are different from some states in that we allow city school systems. Florida, for example, doesn't have city school systems. They have one school district per county. And that, we're not that way. Jefferson County, where I live, we have Jefferson County school system. We have Mountain Brook, Vestavia, Homewood, Hoover, Trussville, multiple things like that. So we're different from that aspect of it. The reapportionment issues are probably going to be issues for the court to decide, I would imagine. But in terms of how we just fund education, distribute the funding, Orange Beach has been an anomaly because of the way we fund education hasn't changed in 30 years. In fact, you will see Chairman Orr and I both introducing bills this session that will address how we fund education. We're one of 6 states that don't fund education based on student needs. We do an archaic funding formula based on a resource model that everybody's moved away from. And because of that, we don't contribute at the state level to the cost of educating children that have higher costs associated with it, special needs, ELL, poverty, gifted. We also provide limited state funding for charter schools. Senator Elliott, I think, was on that joint committee that has looked at what we're doing, which is a hybrid approach that would not gut the way we determine the base for the foundation program, which that is what kind of creates some concerns, because some locals have local funding that allows them to supplement what the state gives. We don't want to touch that local money at the state level. In other words, the local entity has raised their taxes for their schools. We want them to keep that, but we do want to make sure that what we're doing in terms of how we fund this education addresses the need you mentioned, where we have schools that don't have the resources but have the tremendous costs, and even the more affluent systems that have a lot of cost for special needs or ELL that we're not funding. So we have this hybrid model that we will be discussing. It should move with the budgets, and that will help address some of the funding concerns. Specific to what you're talking about, your local issue, though, I can't add much to that. I'm aware there's some disagreements and concerns, but I don't really know how to speak to those.
Well, and if you'll look at the screen here, you'll just see this is the kind of like every week there's another 132 townhomes, 240 multifamily units, 258 home sites, and 1,500 vehicle parking for. I mean, this is just, it's constant and ever. It's a continuous problem here in Baldwin County, because I'm pretty sure we sold off our, what was it? Every school, every county got a section of land to fund education into the future, and we sold that off in 1830 or something. So whenever the public's getting rid of something, it ain't worth nothing, and whenever the school board's wanting to buy property, you can't put a damn price on it. It's priceless. It's my family property, and I could never part with it. $5 million surely, and name the school after us and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I, as a person, but also in my business career, I was a chief financial officer, and my wheelhouse was financial type stuff. And I learned a long time ago, you have positive stress and negative stress. And the stress that I think Baldwin County and areas like mine are dealing with is positive stress, because it's growth. It's things, it's not like economic collapse. So many areas of our state are in economic decline. That's true stress. That's really, what we have is stress, but there's certainly things we need to address. There's challenges with that. And what we're trying to do at the state level is provide some more flexibility to address some of those issues, particularly those issues that are in decline.
So 8 months from now, can we get you to come back so we can talk about the implications of this newspaper article right here and the executive order from Donald Trump, essentially dismantling and dissolving the Department of Education?
Yeah, I'd like to. Let's do that. I will just say that generally, and I've talked to a lot of people, both in higher ed, the State Department of Education, other people who are involved in this, and most of the states would welcome more control over what we do, because a lot of the issues we have in the state have to do with unfunded federal mandates or strings attached to federal dollars. Certainly. And that sometimes creates a lot of inefficiencies, waste of money. It also creates just that we can't solve some of the problems we can solve, and it creates problems. Some of the things they've done. So I don't think there's a resistance, at least among people I've talked with, and certainly myself, about us basically taking more responsibility for this. And the question is, we rely on a lot of state, federal funding. I don't think that funding goes away. How we get it may be different. But I'm old enough to remember. I didn't remember when it happened, but I was around when the Federal Department of Education was created in 1976. Before that time, it was really more responsibility of the states. And you can make arguments about good, bad, whatnot, but I don't think anyone will say that in the last 30 years, the education outcomes in the United States have been necessarily stellar. So I think it's interesting. We got to be careful. Certainly, there's a wrecking ball going on to a lot of these institutions. This is one, though, that I think we can probably manage better if we had a little more control.
And Brandon and I are both, you know, we talked about it last time. You know, if they were out there educating children, that would be one thing, but I just see it as another, you know, it was something a Democrat did as an economic stimulus. He created 20,000 jobs for the next 50 years. And now it's come to an end because we see no value in it. We don't get anything out of it. We have local school boards who, you know, are well equipped and staffed to handle all of these issues at the local level. And and I don't know. So Brandon and I were the generation of kids when we took the California Achievement Test. And, you know, Alabama recognized that certain things like testing from other states like Minnesota and places like that, we emulated them and we adopted them, just like we did the LLC laws and all these other things that we were the last to adopt. We let the other laboratories kind of let it play out, and then we adopt what seems to work in other places. How you're saying that our apportionment is different from other states. If they go to a per student unit dollar amount that comes down from the feds, is that something we're going to have to try to scramble to?
No.
Put a figure to?
The way the state funds education is a result of a lawsuit that was passed that happened more than 30 years ago, and it has to do with equity funding. It requires every local to get state funding. You have to contribute at least 10 mils of income of your taxes. But we determined in Montgomery, basically, I'm way oversimplifying this, but we determined in Montgomery how many teachers every school needs. You need so many teachers per pupil. You need so much money for transportation. You need X number of dollars for this, X for that. And we calculate all that, give that to each local system, and based upon a head count that was Labor Day, 20 days after Labor Day a year ago. And so what happens is every system will get, the amount of money they get is from the state is determined by their local contribution. So it's like a municipality that has a higher tax contribution from locals will actually get less state money. Well, but the whole point is we're not looking at student needs. We have systems in the state that have 30 or 40% ELL, English language learners. And the federal government says when they come to school, you have to educate them. We provide no state funding for that. We don't even, because that's not our funding model. We have a lot of special needs students. The federal government has expanded the definition and the requirements for what that means. And that's a heavy cost to the systems. And that's all local money because we don't fund that in our consideration. So what we would do would be shifting from in Montgomery, determining that every school in the state gets X number of dollars for this based on head count. We would basically leave the foundation formula base number as it is. But on top of that, based on some reserves that we've accumulated, we would put a pot of money that would weight student needs. So a system that had a high level of ELL, high level of special needs, high poverty would get additional funding per student. And that would not go to the school, but to the district so they could utilize that funding in a more flexible as they need it. If you, for example, this is just an example, but if you've got 10 ELL students in this school and you've got 20 in this school, well, right now we're not funding any of that. Well, I don't want to give ELL that issue. It might make sense in that district for them to combine those 10 and 20 into 30, and you can get more efficient, better outcomes. I don't know. Each district is different. So that's what I'm talking about. How we would change the funding is we would base it more on student needs. With the federal money, though, we would just have more flexibility if the state were in control. Let me give you an example that's just came up recently. A few years ago, we determined that we didn't have enough assistant principals in the state. Some schools have 4 or 5, some have 0. And so when you look at who's handling discipline, who's handling all the issues and whatnot, so we made a concerted effort to increase the number of assistant principals in schools. Now, we didn't want to go overboard and have it, incentivized. We have too many APs. We needed some. There was a gap there. So we actually put in a mentoring program to train to incentivize better mentoring of principals and assistant principals. And we had an additional stipend that went into if you were a principal or assistant principal in an underserved area, an area that's hard to get people to go to, or an area that really needs attention, for people who went through this program and went there, they would get an additional stipend. Well, that stipend was based upon what was the federal government determined was a community eligible system. And that meant if you were a school that had 40% free and reduced lunch, that was the benchmark. Well, the Biden administration in the fall changed that definition from 40% to 25%. So now all of a sudden, 75% of the schools in Alabama qualify for this stipend that was designed for a special needs situation. And they applied it to the district. So if you're a school in a district, there's a school in Montgomery that has 5% free and reduced lunch, but Montgomery has like 40%. That school is getting the additional stipend. Well, that's an example of what I'm talking about. When the feds change definitions and change things, it mucks up what we try to do down here. So we've got to fix this because we can't afford to do that. Then that's just throwing money after that. That's not doing anything to improve the outcomes that we were trying to achieve. So I think if we get the federal Department of Education out of the way, and we're able to then as a state operate based on what we think is best for our state, that to me is a better way to spend our money and get better outcomes.
Representative Garrett, for the audience who don't deal with these numbers regularly, how much money per year does the state of Alabama spend on education? Just the state.
So let me just say this, that the budget last year was $9.3 billion. And that was a record. Now, you look at our population, we're a growing state. We've had growing revenue. But we put in a provision 3 years ago in our deal. Let me go back. When the Democrats were in control before 2010, we had been through proration in the state four times in 10 years. We had borrowed all of our money from the rainy day funds, so we had a lot of debt. We had a lot of other issues. If you fast forward where we are today, we've paid all the rainy day funds back. We established the Rolling Reserve Act, which basically limits our ability to go into proration, and we have not been in proration in 14 years, and we don't see it on the foreseeable future. We have reserves now, and these reserves have basically said that we're about and when you look at all the states in terms of fiscal state or financial stability, we're about number 15 in terms of that, even though we're a poor state. And that's because we've been responsible. One thing we did was we don't spend all the money that we get. And we actually added a provision 3 years ago that says we're going to limit our budget growth. Last year, the budget grew 6.5% or 6.25%. This year, it can only grow 6%. Next year, it can only grow 5.75%. And from there on after, unless the legislature changes that, we can only grow 5.75%. Now, if we get money over and above that, there's a waterfall as to where that goes. Some will go into this Rolling Reserve Act to keep us out of proration. Some will go into advancement technology funds, which we can use for special, projects or system that the systems would need. Some would go into this economic reserve fund that would allow us to do transformational things like school choice, like I'm talking about, changing this funding formula to address special needs, student needs. And it would also, then anything left over could be available for supplemental appropriation. So when the state can provide some capital investment for some of the projects for systems that need it or whatnot. But my point is that it's a lot of money and it's growing, but we're not spending all the money we get. We had a lot of money come into the state when over $60 billion during COVID from federal entitlement stuff. And of course, that was crazy because you had the money that came in, but a lot of people were still working. So you had like double type, you had like a double shot here. And we were heavily reliable on income and sales taxes in Alabama. Very little of our reliance is on property taxes. None of the property taxes, except for what's local, and they choose to, goes to education. So it's a lot of money, and it can grow 6.25%. The governor's budget this year is about $9.8 billion. but but we're limiting how much that can grow every year. And we don't have to do all that. Since 2016, we've had about $1.4 billion of either tax cuts, tax rebates, tax exemptions, things like that, because we in Alabama are number 49 or number 50, you can argue the point, in terms of taxes per capita. We do have some of our tax, we have an income tax, some states don't have income taxes, but we have the lowest property taxes in the country. So all that to say is that it's a lot of money, but one of the things we've done is limited what we can spend, and we don't spend everything we get. And just a few weeks ago, last week, we passed $200 million of tax cuts in the House. That's now moved on to the Senate. And I think now there'll be some more additional tax credits and things we'll be looking at going forward. So, the old school got used to what would happen is that you would project what you thought your revenue would be, and that's how you would set your budget. We don't do that now. We limit what we can spend, and then what we get, we further limited that by another secondary cap that says we're going to limit how much the budget can actually grow.
Well,
Representative Garrett, you've introduced legislation that decreases the current 3% tax on groceries to 2%. And I think that's passed the House and gone to the Senate. What's the status on that bill?
I believe that'll pass. I think that what we did a couple of years ago, we cut the grocery tax by 50%. We're one of 10 states that taxes groceries. So it has a sales tax on groceries. We cut it by 50%, but we took the first 25% of that in the first year, and then the next 25% was going to happen when revenue grew 3.5%. That's, again, one of our guardrails to make sure we're just not, we're doing things methodically and pragmatically. But we had hit the wall here where revenue had not grown 3.5%. Didn't think it would grow again 3.5% for that to trigger that second deal. So we actually, because of our financial situation, we said, look, let's go ahead and accelerate that grocery tax reduction. I think we're on the road to eventually eliminating all the grocery tax, but at this point, we just eliminated 50% of it. I believe that will pass the Senate. We also passed a provision that would allow locals to reduce their grocery taxes. Because believe it or not, prior to us passing that grocery tax reduction, locals could not reduce their grocery tax apart from their general sales tax. And then when we made the grocery tax reduction a couple of years ago, we allowed locals to reduce it. But at the request of the League of Municipalities and the county commissioners, we added some guardrails that limited how much they could reduce it. We've removed that now. So now if this passes the Senate, you'll see another 1% grocery tax reduction on all groceries, and then locals will be able to do whatever they want to in terms of lowering their taxes by however much they want to.
Well, I, for one, want to thank you for doing away with the business privilege tax for limited liability corporations, because that was the biggest pain in the butt to send that $100 in every year and remember it.
Well, what we did was do away with the minimum. So the people that, like you're talking about, which was about over half the people that paid that tax paid $100. We did away with that.
Right.
Our next thing we'd like to do would be just to delve further. Let's just do away with privilege altogether, But we have to do these things responsibly and kind of pragmatically. And that privilege tax really doesn't come out of the education trust fund. It comes out of the general fund. So that's not really my budget, but the general fund, is as good a shape as the education budget's in. General fund is in good shape today, but going forward, they're going to have some challenges because 2/3 of their budget are prisons and Medicaid, and the revenue that feeds the general fund is not growth revenue. So they're going to have some more challenges there. But the privilege tax comes out of the general fund, and I was glad to get rid of that minimum. We'd like to go further.
I know you're pressed for time, and we're not to this part of the program yet, but I wanted to ask if we're flush. Any idea why the Department of Conservation is selling off 5 rivers? Is that something that they ran by I don't imagine that's something the governor runs by, the Ways and Means Committee chairman, but.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, but let me just say too, one thing that people really don't understand, and we have the most complicated constitution in the country, arguably in the world. It's huge, it's voluminous. So a lot of people wonder why, when I go to the ballot, am I voting on something in Marshall County or that's because our Constitution requires certain things, and so it's very laborious. And we're one of 3 states that have 2 budgets. We have an education budget and a general fund budget. The general fund budget is all the state agencies, Medicaid, prisons. Education is strictly K through 12, higher ed, and that's the budget that we can use for economic development, so long as it's tied to workforce, so long as that's tied to educational. So there's some traps there. So when you mention these agencies, we don't have 1 budget, we have 2. I'm not familiar with so much of the state agency piece of it, so I don't know the answer to that. And I don't know how much cash we're flush with, but I will tell you the state, from COVID, we did have a lot of federal money come in. And unlike other states, we did rebate some of that to taxpayers, but we also made strategic investments. Before COVID, we were number 47 in broadband access in the United States. Today, we're number 24. And that's because we took a lot of that federal money and that came through the general ARPA funds, a lot of the general fund money to invest in broadband. And that's a complicated thing. So I don't know why they're selling off rivers.
Yeah.
That's not my department. But
I got you. Well, we appreciate your time. And is there anything that that Brandon and I need to have on our radar? Anything that we may not know that's coming up in the legislature that you think's a priority and something that everyone should take note of?
Well, I think we've talked about the budget, and we're going to be, we'll have another increased budget, but it will be fiscally responsible, and we're going to be still in good shape. I think you're going to see us continue to look at how we can reduce taxes, even though we're already at the bottom. We need to continue to do that. We're looking at school funding, addressing a lot of issues, and I will tell you that the situation in your county is something we have to consider as we look at that. You've got a career tech center down there, a career tech program that is the envy of everyone in the state. We would love to see more of those type things around the state, but you had a lot of your local people stepped up with a lot of the funding for that, and so that everybody can't do that. And then I think the social issues that are concerning to a lot of people, I think you continue to see the Republican supermajority address those. And some of those are, they're very, very important issues in our state. But I think if we can kind of follow what's happening with maybe the Department of Education and just get the federal mandates and the federal restrictions off and let us be who we are, then I think you'll see a lot. You'll see us perform a lot better, have a lot better outcomes from education outcomes, economic outcomes, et cetera. So I think we're on the right track, and we'll just see where we go.
Well, I'm gonna let Brandon take the last shot at you. Go for it, Brandon.
Representative Garrett. Let's see here. There's still a lot of debate on the Common Core where we don't have Common Core, but, our Alabama college and career ready standards align with that to some degree. And I know there's some education critics that, say that Common Core is bad and all that. Given that education standards, not just in Alabama, but nationally, has kind of been flat to backwards over the last 5 years, were there problems with that or the implementation of it? Because it didn't seem to raise us to a new level.
I think it's both. I think the idea of going to one curriculum for every state, that never made sense. That didn't make sense. I think it was, again, too much federal control of what we were trying to do. When you ask people what about Common Core, people have different, will tell you different things about what they think it is, And I think that some of the things that were included in some of that federal Common Core curriculum, we've done away with, and the state, and I think you're seeing certainly the current administration deal with a lot of those things. But I think that the key is, in Alabama, we did make investments into the Literacy Act and the Numeracy Act. We invested heavily, and those were Alabama developed programs. Of course, you draw national resources for things, and we've had some. I know the Literacy Act, we upended that board recently, the last couple of years, because some of the material they were receiving we didn't like. I mean, it was not representative of what we wanted in the classrooms for first graders. We're dealing with all that. But I will say that in the national scorecard that came out just recently, Alabama was the only state that saw improvement in both math and reading post-COVID. Part of that, I think, is because we were in school sooner than a lot of the other states.
Amen.
Part of it has to do with the Numeracy and Literacy Act and those specific initiatives we've done, and the approach we've made to target some of these really underperforming schools, because we've seen some dramatic improvement in some of these really poor schools. And so I think that those things are good. But the answer to your question is, we elect our state school board. The governor, they appoint the superintendent, I guess. There's a state superintendent. They're accountable to the legislature. We're accountable to the governor. So, we're in control. If we're in control of those situations, a lot of the concerns that people have had with, I think, Common Core, however you define that, go away, because we're back to what we, control what we want to do in the curriculum. We want to have the approach we want to have. So there's no question to me the Department of Education federally has just failed. I mean, I think if you look internationally at educational outcomes, where the United States, when we were, I'm older than you guys, but back when I was in school, we were in the top 5, we were top, and it's embarrassing to where the United States is today on those international rankings. And I think getting back to the people, back to common sense, back to what works in Alabama is different than what New York State or Washington State may need. It's totally different demographics, totally different people, totally different needs. And I think if we can get more control of that and less federal mandates that are unfunded, by the way, I think we'll do a lot better.
All right. Well, we certainly appreciate you taking your Saturday to speak with us, and we will. And like I said, I don't know. It's black as midnight out here right now where I am.
Goodness, y'all be safe.
Yeah,
y'all be safe. I'll go back to doing my chores.
Spotting for water spouts. Well, thank you, Representative Garrett. We really appreciate you coming on with us.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So, Brandon, the Five Rivers Resource Center is to be auctioned to the highest bidder on April 17th. Check it out, man. The Cypress Gift Shop and Welcome Center. That's right here. The Bartram Landing and Kayak Launch, which is awesome, by the way. It actually has rollers. You put your boat on it, and it just slowly rolls down the hill into place and you go get in it and just push off right into the water. I mean, it's probably the nicest kayak launch in the southeastern United States. Let's see. This is the Nature Center, and there's an auditorium in here. Have you ever been to an event there? There's like an auditorium-style classroom with a big, where the whole wall is a projection screen behind you, the speaker. And then there's an interpretive center with a bunch of stuffed animals. And then there's another center where little kids can go touch the turtles and whatnot. Then there's a picnic pavilion, or there's 2 of them here, right here on the point. And, of course, this is called Five Rivers because it's the confluence of the 5 rivers of the Delta. And that's another look at it. But I'm talking about, dude, the money they spent on landscaping and parking lots and stuff at this place. I mean, what in the world do you think somebody's going to bid for this thing? I mean, unless it's the Porch Creek Indians and they're going to put a casino in there.
Well, I don't believe there's going to be a casino. I kind of do think developers want that property. One of the dirty little secrets of the parks is that, Alabama's got state parks all over the place and they're beautiful, but most of them lose money. This was a big Robert Bentley thing. The Gulf State Park down in Gulf Shores is the moneymaker for the state park system. It and Oak Mountain, in Shelby County, I think you used to be the work for Alabaster, and you know where that is.
I know where that is.
Right off of I-65. Yeah, that park does pretty good. And then Cheehaw does this okay up by Lake Guntersville. Most of the others are money losers. I'm not sure why the state is selling this or they can't make money with it, because it's right in the area where everybody wants to go vacation. I mean, this is spring break for most of the school systems in the state. And, you know, if you go down there today, it's probably full of people utilizing it, taking their kids out there kayaking. I know this should bring, you know, or they anticipate this will bring a pretty good payday, but I think this may be short term. Let's make a big bunch of money now by selling our land, and long term foolish, because we're giving away a property that we've developed and a revenue stream that we can have supporting our parks, you know, moving forward. You know, because once this goes to developers, they're going to do what they want to with it. You know, they might, of course, I don't know what's all in the terms of this deal. Is there a conservation easement?
Well, so
attached to the property? Or
so
what?
Here's the deal. They got to put up $100,000 certified cashier's check to be a qualified bidder. And then the minimum.
Is there an easement where they have to leave it in its natural state, or it has to continue to be a recreation center?
Well,
can this be like another 30-story tall beachfront condo complex is my question.
Well, it doesn't say, there's no restrictions on what they do with the structures. It doesn't say that they can build anything additional. It says the minimum bid.
But it doesn't say they can.
The minimum bid option's $500,000. And
for how many acres?
Let's see here. It just says map parcel, 70 acres, 70.3 acres here and called the property. So then it says the first annual payment of $468 will be due, and 2% will be added per year. And then there's an option to purchase the whole thing. Oh hell, I missed it. The option to purchase was for $8.5 million. I saw that somewhere. Anyway, the important part is, you know what everything's worth by what we're making them insure it for, and that's $5 million per occurrence. There it is. The lessee shall have the exclusive option to purchase the property for $8.5 million purchase price at any time prior to the expiration or termination of the agreement, or not less than 90 days written notice of intent to exercise the option to purchase. So sounds like somebody can get this thing for
mega developers are the only people who can really bid on this then.
$9 million.
Yeah. So I'm kind of thinking if I'm paying $9 million, I'm not going to be leasing out kayaks for the day or charging Harry $10 to launch his kayak or whatever they do. Do they charge anything to launch a kayak?
No, it's just there, and there's a bathhouse and everything. You can go lock your stuff up, bring your own combo lock, and put all your stuff in the locker. And you lock your truck up, and you don't have to worry about people stealing your shit like everywhere else. You put your stuff. I mean, it's a state park, right? There's somebody gonna mess with your stuff, and I can take my dog. It's not a problem, And they have programs over there all the time for educational purposes, field trips. I guarantee you, every school kid in Baldwin County and Mobile County have been to this place 5 times. Every class goes every year. So
yeah, I kind of wish they weren't doing this, but I suspect there is a moneyed interest to, sees mega millions in his future.
Damn right. This smacks of
$40 million condo tower.
This smacks of the Cotton Bayou deal with the Floribama folks that, got the public-private partnership. But anyway, it's all above board and it's totally legal. So what's illegal is for you to put DeepSeek on any state devices. You remember the DeepSeek revelation that caused NVIDIA stock to go to lose $600 billion or whatever? So good news, the Justice Department proposes merging the ATF and DEA into the Justice Department. Or I guess into other agencies under the Justice Department. That would make more sense. Which, seeing as now you can print a ghost gun, I don't know what the hell the ATF is trying to do. And you can print a suppressor.
I mean, I've never understood why the DEA and FBI, the DEA and ATF's functions are not transferred over to the FBI and let FBI agents handle it. Maybe you have some that specialize in drugs, or maybe some that specialized in untaxed tobacco, or firearms that shoot too many rounds per minute. But I don't see why they needed their own separate agencies. It made no sense at all.
Yeah, we should put them in charge of the library books.
While agencies are having to cooperate with each other, they should all be one agency.
Okay, so you know how you can print a ghost gun, but there's certain parts of your ghost gun that you can't print, like the barrel and the firing pin. Okay, so you can buy a kit.
It depends on what kind of 3D printer we're talking about.
Well, but there are ghost gun kits that you can buy from like Burnell's, where it says, "Hey, this is package A for the Glock 43." And, you print the rest of it, and here's the barrel and firing pin, and blah, 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 blah. And it goes with schematic, whatever the number is that you can download from the internet. So anyway, the Supreme Court upholds Biden regulation on ghost gun kits. So, yeah, like now having components for sale in a package as opposed
like
to selling them individually is somehow going to stop anybody from doing anything.
Yeah, between you and me, I don't think we're divulging anything here. There's a whole bunch of people that don't have the right to carry firearms, because they've committed a felony or domestic violence, or they've been ruled mentally unfit, that do have guns. And, and they buy parts. And now the parts are going to be treated like buying a gun. So
stupid.
You've got to go through the whole background check and all that. So I guess we're just going to send, right now the illegal gun market's being handled by the drug cartels and other criminal elements. And I guess they're now going to handle gun parts too now.
And we'll go after them hard until we need to kill another president or the patsy or whatever. Okay, so did you see this, the NPR thing? So, dude, it was brutal. So, we're going to listen to just a minute of this, okay? You ready?
Over cold, so I'm losing my voice here. Miss Marr, I want to start with you. Just generally, would you say you generally agree or disagree with the following statement? The history of all hitherto existing society is the history of class struggles?
I would not say I agree with that, sir.
You're not. That's good to hear. It's interesting because a lot of your thinking, as expressed by your public statements, is deeply infused with economic and cultural Marxism.
You can't hear this?
Do you believe that America is addicted to white supremacy?
I'm not hearing anything on my end.
I believe that I tweeted that, and as I've said earlier, I believe much of my thinking has evolved over the last half decade.
It has evolved. Why did you tweet that?
I don't recall the exact context, sir, so I wouldn't be able to say.
Okay. Do you believe that America believes in black plunder and white democracy?
I don't believe that, sir.
You tweeted that in reference to a book you were reading at the time, apparently, The Case for Reparations.
I don't think I've ever read that book, sir.
You tweeted about it. You said you took a day off to fully read The Case for Reparations. You put that on Twitter in January of 2020.
Apologies, I don't recall that I did.
Okay, so I know you weren't able to hear that, but essentially they painted her in the corner and they said, "Do you believe in reparations?" And she says, "No, I never said that." And they said, "Really? Because you tweeted about it on whatever." So either she was lying that she took the day off to read this book, or she's lying under oath now about the tweet that she obviously posted.
I think we're being a little bit hard on a Washington bureaucrat because, when it paid to be liberal and woke and into reparations, oh yeah, she was good with that. Now it's like, no, I'm not for any reparations. I'm not for, any of that. I would never was for that. The political winds have changed, and she's repositioning herself to, the political winds. It's just normal, typical BS from Washington bureaucrats.
Okay. So are you ready for her career path? 2007 to 2010, Mar worked in New York City at UNICEF as an innovation and communications officer. 2010, 2011, the National Democratic Institute as an ICT program officer. 2011, 2013, she worked at the World Bank as a consultant for technology and international development and democratization. In 2012, Mar's Twitter feed on issues related to the Middle East was noted for its coverage of Arab Spring. From 2013 to 2014, Mar was advocacy director at the Washington, D.C.-based Access Now. She focused on impact of people's laws and cybersecurity, morality, and defamation of the state that increased state censorship and reduced dissent. Mar was chief communications officer for Wikimedia. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, they do the Wiki Encyclopedia.
Yes, she became interim executive director from March 2016 following the resignation of executive director Lila Trekakov and was appointed executive director in 2016, the position subsequently retitled to executive director and CEO. Mar stepped down as her position as CEO and executive director of Wikimedia, and Myanmar Islander was appointed as her successor. Mar stated that her focus on global digital inclusion. Let's see, what'd she do next? She described the First Amendment as the number one challenge in regulating content and fighting disinformation. From 2002 to 2022 to 2023, Mar was a member of the United States State Department Foreign Affairs Policy Board and an expert panel established in 2011 by then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton to advise U.S. officials. As of 2023, she chairs the board of directors of the Signal Foundation. She is also the board chair for the nonprofit organization Adventure Scientists. In October of that year, Web Summit appointed Merritt as the chief executive officer to replace Patty Cosgrove. And then somehow she ends up in the miraculous position of in January 2024, she's named CEO of NPR.
So she hasn't really been there at NPR for 60 days. She probably knows less there than any secretary about what NPR actually does.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, she's an executive.
And she's married to a lawyer for Lyft and Apple. Just so you know who...
There's somebody has to make money.
Just so you know who this nice-looking little blonde lady is. Okay, so SignalGate. So who is Signal owned by? Do you remember that whole carnage that came up a while ago? Anyway, it's not good people own Signal. And so the fact
Eric Steph should, as much money as this government spends on communications, especially at the Pentagon, you would think there's like a special phone and an Army major comes out and hands you the phone and you do talk about military operations on the special phone. But no, they were running a chat on Signal, of all places, in which we're discussing who we're going to bomb, why do we need to bomb, and how bad we need to bomb, and when it all starts and ends, and our casualties and whatnot. And it's like, I'm not a military and operations genius, but from the very beginning, this made no sense, the way this was conducted. And somehow Mike Waltz he or his people are incompetent enough that they shared this group chat to join in this to some reporter for the Atlantic.
Jeffrey Goldberg.
If
Yeah,
if
not
they
just some
shared it with
reporter, the
Brendan and
editor in
somebody
chief.
I'd be glad to have been in it. And, I'd probably never reported on it. It's like, oh, hey, we're bombing the Houthis today.
Okay.
Good job, Pete.
So speaking of bat phones, who does Kash Patel work for in the chain of command? The Attorney General Pam Bondi.
Yeah, Pam Bondi.
Okay. So do you know about the new bat phone? So there's a phone on the president's desk that only Kash Patel has a number to. And he, on the other end, is the only person that answers the other line. So there's a direct line from the FBI director to the president, circumventing the attorney general, which, hell, maybe there's a memo that says they're going to do that. And she agreed to all of it. But anyway, I just thought that was something of interest that we should talk about.
That's the president's command. That's the president's command.
Yeah.
I would rather not be micromanaging every FBI major initiative from the White House, but
so Brandon, are there air traffic?
That's the prerogative of the president.
So is there air traffic stuff going on because we're looking for it, or is there lots of stuff going on with airplanes that's kind of inexplicable?
It just seemed
gremlins?
like, January, we swore in a new president, and the FAA forgot about its central mission, which was to keep us from dying in the air. I mean, we've got planes crashing into Army helicopters. We've got planes doing barrel rolls on, runways. We got near misses. It just seems like it's not been, if you're an FAA official, it's not been a good 90 days or so.
Yeah. Okay, so the biggest fail in the history of economic development lies at the feet of the mayor of Evergreen, Alabama, who refused to allow to negotiate a cheaper rate to keep the Conecuh Sausage Company in Conecuh County in Evergreen, Alabama. Okay? They are now shutting down production and moving the operation across the river to Covington County. And surely to hell they got economic incentives to do that, to move it across the county line.
Yeah.
It's just sad.
I never believed in allowing the local city, county governments to do economic development. I know that's a minority position in the GOP. Economic development should be handled by the state, solely by the state. Because I understand we can't disarm, but we've got Conecuh County competing with Covington County, Evergreen's competing against,
Baymonette.
Where are they going?
Andalusia.
Yeah, I mean, whoever. We had Birmingham compete with Irondale over Walmart. And I mean, that's not economic development. That's just stealing tax dollars from your next door buddy. I mean, all this is icky. And again, the big culprit here is the mayor of Evergreen for not valuing, his most prized corporate client in his town, which was Conecuh Sausage.
And now it's Conecuh Sausage made in Covington County, not Conecuh County.
We're going to change the name to Covington County?
I don't think so. Sausage? I think they'd be losing a lot there.
Hey.
Okay, so here's some more local stuff down here on the bay. AlDOT parts ways with team that had been picked to build new bayway. So there was a team brought in to go out and pitch, design, build. Anyway, all that blew up too. This is the most snake bit damn project that anybody's ever tried to take on. So this just in.
The dirty little secret is there's nobody in this country with $8 billion they want to spend to build this fancy bridge and then get their money back over the course of the next 30 years by tolls. That's their business model here. Aldoc can fire this team. They can hire another team. Between you and me, let's say Harry and Brandon Heck Construction Company, for us to spend $8 billion of our construction company's money, I'm going to need a pretty substantial toll from every vehicle crossing that bay. And you can't tell me that you're going to leave, the causeway and the 2 tunnels allowing people to go around my expensive toll bridge without paying me. And that was where it blew up before, was they wanted to toll the causeway and both tunnels so that people weren't going through the tunnel to avoid the toll. And, to break even on this project in the next 10 years, you've got or even 20 years, you're going to have to charge a lot more massive toll than what, normal Baldwin County and Mobile County commuters, you've got commuters going both ways there, want or can pay. And there's no good solution to this. Right now, I think this bridge never gets built.
Thank you, Brandon. And why don't we build a tunnel? Build another damn tunnel. Okay, so this has been declared terrorist attacks. There seems to be a concerted effort by Antifa or whomever, the anti-one percenters, who are going out and setting fire to all the Teslas.
I don't get this. Let's be honest. If the only reason to buy any electric vehicle is because you believe in climate change theory and you hope that you driving around on top of a giant electric battery is good for the planet. So basically, you've got one group of liberal kooks who are violent liberal kooks, apparently, setting fire to the cars of mostly people that probably vote the same way they do, just because Elon Musk is, now a advisor to a Republican president. The Tesla is going from being, America's one, green electric energy wonder kid to, some right-wing fascist guys that we have to wipe out. And it just doesn't make sense. I mean, I cannot imagine a scenario where I get so mad at somebody that I don't know that I'm burning cars that their company made. And, the people that drive the Teslas have already paid the money to Elon Musk, so it doesn't hurt Elon at all when you burn up their little truck.
Well,
or I should say big truck, because those things aren't very little.
This fella says he drove 300 miles in rural Virginia, then asked police to send him the public surveillance footage of his car. So guess how many times he got caught on surveillance camera driving through rural Virginia?
Probably 35 times.
No, it was easier for him to describe the portions of the trip where he wasn't surveilled. where they lost him, right? There wasn't a camera at the fork in the road. So but they picked him up later, don't worry. So I thought I would show the cover of the Laniat magazine this week. It's worth your time. On the cover is a depiction of a shark warning app, and this all comes back to Katie Britt's Lulu's Law. So do you remember young Lulu who lost her arm to a shark?
Yeah, I hated that poor girl lost her leg from that shark attack. It was really courageous of her to keep fighting and, bite off the shark and not give up on the beach. I'd probably died of a heart attack before I got to shore.
As soon as that thing grabbed my arm, Harry had a heart attack.
Yeah,
that was it.
The minute I realized the shark had my leg and was taking me anywhere, Brandon's heart would have failed at that point, and Brandon would have just been killed by a shark. But Lulu's will to live was impressive. I'm not against this bill. I would vote for this bill. It's like, okay, so if we see a shark in, up near the beach, everybody's little phone's going to go off saying, oh no, it's a shark by the beach.
Imagine that. Where they live. It's like seeing a wolf
in their water.
It's like holy people, shit, there were wolves in Yellowstone. Oh yeah, we turned them loose there.
Swim in a pool. The ocean is the shark's pool. It's also their dinner table. What they're hoping is that there's a seal. Of course, I think we've killed off all our seals down there. That, is hanging on the beach, is now swimming in the waters. He's going to come up in the shallows and grab that sea lion or whatever that he hunts. Penguins if we were way south. But instead, we've got people that are taking up the beach, we're messing up the little turtle nest, and we've got to cater to the people. I guess if people are going to be on the beach, in the water, the shark app is a good idea. Maybe a better plan would be to stay at the resort and go to the resort at the pool and look at the ocean.
Okay. So while we're defunding the damn National Weather Service, we're going to, you see what I mean? It's like priorities, Katie. Maybe people dying of tornadoes in Tuscaloosa is a little more, there's a higher body count there.
Tornadoes do scare me more than sharks.
Yes, me too. And I live here on the water where they're bull sharks. Well, anyway.
Tornadoes just happen to us all of a sudden here in Alabama.
So, Brandon, anything else on your agenda this week?
The big thing we've got coming, and I got some word on this. The last week, the legislature, they've been off this week. Before they left, the Senate Health Committee voted on a bill to ban Delta 8, Delta 10, Delta 12, all of these cannabinoids that you can distill from
CBD.
Yeah, from CBD oil. From do you distill it? This is all legal. Texas just banned it, I'm told. Now, the committee told Senator Melson, even though it's his committee, no, we're not going to do this. I'm being told Senator Melson is going to bring that back in committee this week.
Well,
if my source is right, they're going to try to force this out of committee so that Alabama can join Texas and also ban Delta 8. My biggest problem with the Delta 8 is that the stuff's not very consistent. I've heard from people that have used it, sometimes it does like minor buzz, makes them feel a little bit better, minor buzz, or sometimes they don't feel it at all. And then they get a batch where it just knocks them out. And they can't work for a day or two. I kind of wish we could reg it and make sure we had purity, but I was told by a senator it'd just be easier to ban it.
Of course, it would be easier to ban it. All right, so we're gonna leave you with the words of Eddie Tyler at the Baldwin County Board of Education meeting last week. Brandon, have a good one, man.
Well, you made a comment like that, and also you said that I'm not going to do anything about it. And I'm wondering how you know all this stuff.
It's been going on for a while.
So, but I appreciate you. No, you can't. No. But since you attacked me, I felt like I had a response for you. And my email to you was not rude.
It was.
Well, then you have thin skin.
No, it was
rude. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Open up.